Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. Welcome back to the 5th episode of an Expo and Excellence podcast. Today we have our guest Jaylene Cid in our 5-part mini-series. This is the third part of interviewing each of the national championship winners of this year, a huge accomplishment. She's a decorated competitor, a CCAP alumni from Arizona, and she'll be competing with Vanessa Ruiz in January for the Junior World Cup. We're great to have you on, Jaylene.
Thank you, great to be here.
Awesome. So I want to go into how you got into like the CCAP program and how you got into enjoying culinary and seeing it as like a possible career path for you. We'll go from there.
Yeah. So growing up, I always really enjoyed cooking. I feel like I always was in the kitchen helping my mom or dad out, whether it was making cookies or just helping make dinner. But I didn't realize culinary could be something you could do as a career until it was in my high school year, sophomore year. Originally, I had gone to a different high school my freshman year that didn't offer culinary classes. So once I moved into another high school my sophomore year, I saw that culinary was an option to take as an elective. So I had the option between fashion and sewing and culinary. And to me, I saw fashion and sewing as more as a hobby for me. I was like, I really want to do that. That sounds really cool. And my mom was there also telling me, you should learn how to do that. Because my mom loves to sew, so she was like pushing me to do fashion and sewing. I was like, you know what? Maybe I'll do fashion and sewing. So I put fashion and sewing as my first option and culinary as my second. And I think it was a blessing in disguise at the time because I ended up getting culinary because fashion was taken up. So I was kind of upset, but I was like, you know what? I like to cook. I love helping in the kitchen. So I'm still gonna have fun regardless. Yeah. And I love to eat.
This wasn't CCAP. This was just like a BOCES program.
Yeah. It was a basic culinary class that they offer at school.
Oh, okay.
So it was like, I guess culinary 101, you can say.
Yeah. Okay.
So I got into that class, and sophomore year, I was really getting into it. I think it was that year where I realized the potential I had, I guess you can say, because I knew I always liked to cook, but I didn't know whether I was good at it or not
and
until
you kind of started to see that you actually
were. And I started learning more about the techniques and the vocab and everything, and I was like, okay, this is actually kind of cool. I didn't expect that to come from it. So it was the summer before my junior year, I heard about this thing called CCAP. And I heard of it through one of the students in my class who was an upperclassman. He would always talk about competitions in culinary. And I was like, ooh, competitions, okay. like Chopped? Because I would always watch that. So I was like, okay. So I reached out to him and asked him a little bit more about that. And he explained to me what CCAP was. And I reached out to my culinary teacher at the time, and she told me about it. And I was like, okay, this is cool. I'm all in. I want to do it. Sounds fun. And you have an opportunity to win a scholarship. So I was like,
even better, right?
Even better, right? So that year, I was the only junior to do it at my school. So I was a little nervous. It was my first time doing any competitions. And I had trained, and I ended up getting in the top 10 juniors once I competed. So
in the Arizona area?
In the Arizona area. So that's when I was like, okay, maybe I'm a little good at this, right? And through CCAP, actually, that's where I met Vanessa, because I know Vanessa through CCAP. So I was able to meet her. She taught me how to do the French rolled omelet. She's the one that taught me how to perfect
She's
it.
a famous Instagram video.
Yeah, exactly. Because I met her in person, and I saw her omelet, and I was like, oh, wow. I looked at mine, and I was like, ooh. I was like, mine needs to look like hers. So I went up to her, not knowing what her name was or anything. I was like, hey, can you show me how to get mine to look like yours? And she was like, yeah, of course. She was really sweet about it. And then ever since then, it was history.
Besties.
Exactly, besties. But yeah, so then I continued CCAP into my senior year. I was one of 3 seniors at my school who did CCAP.
So is that I don't actually know, because Arizona CCAP's so big. Is that kind of light for a school to have only 3 students, or is that kind of about average?
It's about average, I'd say. So there's not usually a lot of students doing it, especially in the normal schools, in the public schools where they just offer the basic culinary classes.
Yeah.
More in things such as like EVIT, there's more students doing CCAP because they know more about it. But yeah, so I was one of 3 students doing, one of 3 seniors at my school doing CCAP, and I remember practicing like so many times a week. I would drive an hour to go to different high schools to practice. Even when I didn't want to, I was like, no, like I have to have the dedication to do it. If I want it, I have to put in the work, right? So I would go to the practices, and day of competition came, and I did what I do best, or what I could do.
Yeah,
and,
right.
and I ended up here. Now I was able to win that scholarship.
It's interesting. I mean, you talk about how sophomore year you chose fashion, then you kind of get culinary as like the backup, and then a year later you're like, I need to drive an hour to go to this school so I can do it. How did that even come about? Like, where does that mindset come from? I mean, you went from not even thinking you want to do it as a career in general, and a year later you're like you're all in, like trying to like compete and practicing more than most people do. Like where does that come from for you? I
feel like growing up I've always been a very like dedicated person. Like if I'm gonna do something, I'm gonna do it right, and I'm gonna do it all the way. I'm gonna go into it 100%. And once I started culinary and I was able to grow that passion for it, it became easier, because once you have a passion for something, I feel like it doesn't seem like a chore. Driving an hour away was like nothing for me, because I was like, I know doing this will be worth it in the long run. So
that's really cool. I mean, and then CCAP, and then did you have a couple offers? Because I know CCAP doesn't just offer Monroe, obviously. They offer a couple schools. Did you have a couple offers from like CIA and stuff like that? So
so we had the option to, we ranked the colleges we wanted to go to in order of like your most to your least. I actually didn't put Monroe on my list until, it wasn't until, I think it was 2 weeks before the application was due, or a week or 2. Only because I don't know if I've never heard of Monroe, or I think I did, but I don't know why I didn't put it on my list.
It was probably just you heard it in passing. You didn't really know much about the school or anything. And then I'm assuming you had CIA high up there, because I believe they have a campus in LA, right? Or somewhere in California.
They have in LA.
And that's close to you, so that'd probably be was that your top choice before
CIA
Monroe?
was my top choice, yes. But it was the one in Hyde Park. I wanted.
Oh, you wanted to come here?
I knew I wanted to come to New York. I was like,
Usually the Arizonians are like, they get their bachelor's, boom, right back to Tucson or Phoenix or somewhere else around there.
No, because once I started culinary, I was like, if I'm gonna go to a culinary school, I want to go to New York.
To the Big Apple.
The Big Apple. That's where it's at. So I just knew whatever school was gonna give me the scholarship, I was like, please let it be in New York. So CIA was up there.
You said you didn't have Monroe till the week before the application.
Yeah.
So what changed?
So I honestly have no idea. I think it might have been Vanessa who was telling me about it, and I was like, should I was on a like, should I not? And also I feel like the application was a little longer than the other ones, and I was like, I have to call and do an interview, and I have to like do an essay, and the other ones were just like, just give us your information. And I was like, this is so much work, I don't want to do anything. At the time I was working, I was so lazy, but eventually I was just like, you know what, like I'll just do it. I'm just gonna do it. So I did it, and it was well worth it.
Ended up here. And then when you got here, I mean, it seems like with your mindset, was the competition team and like trying to get onto that, was that kind of just like, of course for you? Or you had some doubts? Well, most students do have doubts, so I wouldn't be surprised if you had a little bit, but.
Yeah, so I actually was terrified of competing before Monroe. Going to the CCAP competitions, like, I would like full blown be like sweaty palms, like hyperventilating in the car, like I don't want to do this, go back. So I even shocked myself when I came, and my parents, but I shocked everyone when I came to school, and I was like, competition team, okay. And like, I knew I wanted to do it, because
Yeah,
I was
especially
like,
me in your lecture class talking about it. How could you not?
right?
How could you not?
No, for sure. So I was like, this is an opportunity I can't pass up. I was like, I want to make the full out of these short years I'll be here. So
Because we're here so not that
exactly.
long, 2.5 years, basically.
It goes by so quick. 1 year already went by, and it doesn't even feel like it. So
yeah,
competition team was definitely a good choice. I did have some doubts at first because I was like, oh, there's so many people, so many good people. Like, I just, like, I knew stuff, but I knew I didn't know much. And I was like,
yeah,
especially in the competition area.
That's like the culinary paradox. The more you learn, the more you realize you don't know.
Exactly.
It's like, oh my God, it's like, there's that. Oh, I didn't know that existed. Oh, well, in that, there's like 100 other things in there, and it's like crazy. But we had tryouts and you were picked as the 10 that was like, you guys are like the team, and then the 5, but you weren't in the initial 5 at first. So how did you feel going into with that, and then going into December comp for your first dish? I mean, what was your feelings around that? Around
not being on the 5?
Yeah.
Well, first of all, being chosen to be on the 10 was already like
already
like, wow, like I was so happy about that. I was telling all my family, my parents were telling everyone else, and I was like, oh my gosh, this is like, I didn't expect to come this far, like just in the 10. And once he had chosen the 5, I was definitely a little upset, as anyone would be, because you come here like with a purpose, wanting to be on top, I guess you can say, or just get everything you can out of it, right?
Yeah, right.
So I was upset, but I wasn't gonna let that like stop me from pursuing keep going, you know?
Yeah.
So going into the December show, I was definitely a little nervous. I think I have videos of me plating for the first time, and I'm over here like shaking, and it's funny to see the difference in how I was back then and how I am now.
Did you shake plating during comp? Because my first competition, my hands were shaking. Oh
I think
my God,
I was.
yes.
I might have been.
They're like, even the judges are like, breathe a little
Calm
bit.
down,
I was
calm
like, if I wasn't breathing, I wouldn't be standing
Yeah.
here, right? So, yeah, your dish was, did you have the polenta?
I did have the polenta.
You did have the polenta. How did that go for you?
It went good. I think I really liked the dish. It was a good solid dish. I remember going, I think it was Thomas Bradburn who had the same dish prior. So
Yes.
I remember going to his room one night and bringing a notebook and a pencil, and I was like, okay. And we sat there for an hour straight, and I was like, tell me everything you know about this recipe.
Yeah. I did that with India for his April dish. I mean, that Greek dish was the same one I had for April as well. So yeah, we definitely try to help out when we can. But did you feel like you had something to prove going into that December competition, or no, you just wanted to kind of give it your all, do the best you can kind of thing?
I think I wanted to definitely just give it my all, because I feel like I was one of the, on the 10, I feel like Dean had seen a lot of the others, like in America's Best or at the boot camp. That was like, coming into school in September, that was one of my first times meeting Dean. So in my head, I was kind of like, okay, I want to show Dean or like everyone else like what I can do, and I want to show myself what I can do. I want to see my potential, right? So
yeah, I think it worked out for you for that December comp, right? That was a gold, right?
It was a gold.
Yes, of course. So obviously going into regionals, you were on the support team, but then beyond that, we had the Michigan competition where the 5 who did regionals and secured our spot at nationals did some dishes, you know, and that happened. But the support 5, we actually haven't mentioned this for the podcast. The supporting 5 team, you and then at the time a couple others like Hamza and Bella, they all did skills.
Yes.
And not only did all of you get gold medals, you guys smashed it out of the park. To put it in perspective for you, let's just hold this up real quick, right? So this is 100 perfect score on knife skills, right? And that is, the head judge said that is the 4th person he's ever given this honor to. And that not only is that impressive, but to put it into perspective, like I was saying, when me, Thomas, and Gio, the champions last year, did knife skills, it was a year and about 4 months into school.
Yeah.
And we got silver medals. I had an 88, and I was the highest score.
Yeah.
And you guys were six months in, if that, going into knife skills, and 100, 98, 96, 95, 93, like crazy. And like, you guys should really be proud of that. But not only that, how do you feel like you got here, and how did you feel receiving this honor? Because I witnessed you guys, especially you and Hamza, practicing a lot. He had something to prove, especially because he had that thing in Cleveland. And I think you also had something that you felt like you wanted to prove, 100%.
Sure.
Tell me about that.
So yeah, going into the practices for skills, I was very excited because I feel like in high school, my teacher would always tell me my knife skills were pretty good, right? But that like was kind of like
being humble.
So someone humbled when I worked at a restaurant back in the summer, and I remember working with this chef, and he straight up told me, your knife cuts are so bad, like you gotta go home and practice them.
Oh my God!
And
you
I
ever
was
tell
like,
Dean that? You'd
no,
be like, what?
I didn't. But I remember him telling me that, and I was like, I was flabbergasted.
You were like, CCAP told me I have great knife skills.
I was like, oh wow. I was like, okay. And I feel like that always stuck with me. So going into skills, I was like, okay, I definitely want to do my best on this. And I remember the practices, I loved the practices. I was always in time of...
It's fun because you guys had to do it in the lobby with the low tables. It's a shame you guys he didn't actually make you do it outside. I really wanted
to do it outside.
I wanted to see you guys do it outside because that would have been fun.
But I definitely felt like I had something to prove for this show specifically because the one before that, Ohio...
Cleveland, yes.
Cleveland, Ohio, yeah. I had a duck dish. So that dish, going into the competition, I wasn't really scared. I was confident only because of how my practices prior to that competition had been going.
You had good practices going into Cleveland for sure.
So I was definitely nervous, but I was like, I just gotta do what I have been doing this whole time, and it should go good, right? And after the show didn't go how I expected it to go, I was like, okay, well, I didn't get the gold that I wanted, but that just pushed me harder to get a gold for the next show.
Yeah, 100%.
Which was the skills one. So, and that's what we did.
Yeah, Cleveland was definitely, I don't want to say it, but it's the only way I can say it. It was definitely, I think, a rough competition for our team. Coming off of December, we had... I think it was 16 gold medals and like 18, we had about the same gold as we did silver, and it was a lot of gold. Sure. I mean, we got our first competition for my team, we got 8 golds, or it was 8 golds for the whole comp, and that was considered extremely impressive. We doubled that when you guys came in your group, because you guys just had this immense talent, and not even just in the 10, even beyond that. There's some students that are really talented, and the fact that we were able to do so well, and then coming off that, your guys' first comp away, right? That was the first one, I believe, or it was after Kansas.
Yeah,
it was after Kansas, but for the support team, it was because they didn't compete in Kansas, and then to go in and it was a lot of you racked up either high silvers or golds in December, and then a lot of you didn't come away with I think what was expected, and I think that's just a testament to how one, not everything's gonna go the way you want, especially in your window, and two, the toll that traveling and the pressure of that and new environments can actually take. Do you think that had a huge part in it?
I think so, for sure. It was, like you said, it was our first time, or my first time competing in another state, and
Other than Arizona.
Yeah, exactly.
Other than Arizona. But outside of where your current home base is, right? So you had Monroe and you competed here.
Right.
You all practiced here. So.
And I think that morning I was just especially nervous for some reason. I think I even woke up and my contacts were blurred, extra blurry, and I was like, oh my gosh, I can't see. We were walking
that happens to you too?
Yeah.
Oh my God.
So I was like, I can't see, and then I was like, I don't have any contact solution. I was like, what am I gonna do? I was telling Dina, I was like, oh my gosh, I'm not gonna be able to cut. I can't see. And then, so that definitely also shook me up a little bit. But I think so many factors, and then just putting so much pressure on myself of like, okay, like I need to do this and I need to do it good.
You think in your own head a little bit too much?
I definitely think so.
But the reality is you still did really well at that competition. It was a high silver. And then after that competition, and then we had the knife skills, which we had talked about. But I mean, right after that, there a slot that was opened up on the core team, and you were chosen to fill that slot. I don't actually know like exactly how you were told and all of that. So I'd love to actually know like that story and your thoughts about that.
For sure. So leading up to that, I'm sure everyone knows, everyone kept joking about it, like, oh, Jaylene's gonna be on the team. And I'd be like guys, don't say that, like, relax.
Stop it, stop.
But there was still that little like sliver of hope, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
It was kind of like bittersweet because it's always sad to see someone leave.
Of course.
But then it's also like
an opportunity.
Exactly. So I think Dean, I was in Hawaii at the time.
Oh.
And I think Dean had texted me. He's like, are you in AZ? I was like, no, I'm actually in Hawaii. He's like, oh, okay. And I was like, that's interesting. He's like, when do you get back? Like, can you come to my office one of these days? I was like, yes.
Then you
yes,
booked the ticket in the next hour.
Exactly, right? So I got back. I think it was a Tuesday. I went to his office and I was like, hi, Dee. Like, I think me and Bella went together because it was the time where Dee wanted to talk to the whole team. So I went in first and I sat down and I was like, what is he gonna say? So I had sat down and he just started talking, and he said it in the most like nonchalant way ever. Like, he was like, so you're gonna be on the team now? And I was like, I just sat there. I was like, like trying to process it, cause he just like
brushed past it. Because in his mind it was like, all right, we're choosing this. All right, this is what we're doing moving forward.
So I was like, okay. I was like, wow. And then he said something. He was like, yeah. He's like, after that Michigan show, he's like, it'd be stupid of me to leave you in the basement. He said, and I was like, oh wow. I was like,
can't leave you on the bench.
Yeah.
Put him out as a starter.
So I was like, okay. And I was like, oh, like, thank you so much. Like, I won't let you down. Like, thank you for this opportunity, because it had been something I had wanted like so bad.
Yeah.
Like, there would be nights where I'd be like, oh my gosh, like,
imagine.
Can you imagine it?
Yeah.
I'd be like, ugh, like, because every time I would watch the team, I'd be in awe. I'd be like, oh my gosh, I wish I was right there, right? And then when it was finally, the opportunity was finally presented to me, I was like, this is it, like, wow. And then, of course, I told my parents and everything, and they're like, oh my gosh, but it was a surreal moment.
And they wanted you to do fashion.
Yeah.
Could you believe it? Could you believe it? But I mean, this is interesting because you're the only person that has like this unique perspective on your team. How was your first practice as a team for you? It was your first nationals practice, but it was your first team practice that you've ever had.
Right.
So you've not done any team comps before that, right?
No, never.
So how did that go?
So
how did you feel?
I was definitely a little nervous because I was like, whew, I'm the fresh meat. Like, everyone knows what they're doing.
Had already won a whole competition,
right?
And you're going in.
Yeah, so I was like, I'd been there through it all. I'd seen how it works, but it's definitely different when you're actually doing it. And it's like, I was really nervous. I was like, oh, I hope I don't do anything to mess everyone else up. I hope I can like keep up. Because I had practiced with them back in regionals when my partner at the time, Tati, was out sick.
Oh, so, yes, you were on salad for a bit
so
there.
Dean had to he was like, okay, Jaylene, you're in for salad. And I was like, it was one of the early practices, so I was like, okay, I semi-know how it is to work with them.
Yeah, it's not like totally new, you at least have an experience.
But that first practice was definitely something. I was like, ooh, I was excited. It was good. I really enjoyed it.
Yeah, that's awesome. And then that training camp, you just felt like you felt getting more comfortable each time as you were going on?
Yeah, for sure. I feel like each practice I got more comfortable, not only with like the tasks I was doing.
Yeah, but also working with them.
Exactly.
With them, 100%. That's awesome. And then, so fast forward, we're going to to nationals, I want to know your thoughts about, because it seems like what the team thinks is like, obviously you guys won and it was by a huge margin, but the team's like, that definitely wasn't our best run.
Definitely not.
Definitely not our best run. So how
Yeah.
do what do you think played into that? I mean, how do you feel about the whole thing?
Well, nationals was definitely something. Leading up to it, I feel like everyone was like, this doesn't seem right. Everyone's like, I feel like we're coming to compete. Like, and that's how I felt. I was like, I feel like I wasn't as nervous as I usually would be for a competition, because I remember like for Cleveland or for Michigan, I'd be like really nervous.
Nationals.
But coming into this, I wasn't really nervous. I don't know if it was because I knew I was working with the team and I had other people to like help with it, right? Or maybe it was just the confidence level going into it.
Yeah.
But I think the run itself was definitely a little rough, like everyone was saying. A few things did go wrong, but I feel like in the moment we were able to
recover.
Exactly.
I actually talked about this with Michaela, how you guys are a huge exception and we were the opposite of the exception, where in our team, something went wrong, that's a roadblock, and it's like off the rails.
Yeah.
And you'll notice even in individual competitions, usually like someone does something that you're like, ooh, and then it's like completely done from there.
Yeah.
You guys at regionals and at nationals, both of them I don't think were the best runs that you guys had for the training camp, but every mistake that you guys made, you were able to pick up.
Exactly.
And you guys were able to pick up time. I know at regionals, I believe at nationals, where you guys are actually a little late on the app and then caught up with the other courses, which is, I don't know if you realize how kind of crazy that is, because usually, especially for our team, 2 minutes late on the app, we're 8 minutes, 10 minutes late on the dessert. And it's like clockwork. And Dean was like, that's every team. You guys are different, and that's so interesting. But that's a testament to you guys.
For sure.
And to go back to what you were saying about like the nerves, the most interesting thing is, for our team going into nationals, we were not nervous at all. We were confident to like maybe a kind of an absurd degree.
Yeah.
Because Dean was like, you guys nervous? What's going on? You have to understand, we weren't slamming 90s like you guys were. You know, we had like we barely reached 90 by the end of it. But even then, he was like, I remember we were at Denny's. We had like 3 breakfasts at Denny's in Vegas. And then he was like, you guys never, we were like, no. And then going into our run, we were so tired. I mean, we were in the room the night before, like counting out the prep, and we wake up in the morning and we're tired. But Dean was like, you guys are not cooking here. You guys are cooking on instinct alone. You guys will be so exhausted, jet lag, messed up, all of that. It's crazy.
Yeah.
One thing I'll say is, Michaela couldn't stress enough how hot the kitchen was.
Yeah.
For us, it was different. They actually pumped all the AC in the whole facility into the kitchen. It was freezing.
It was cold.
It was
Oh my
cold. I
gosh.
was cold. Right?
And you guys
But-
still had hot plates or no?
Oh, of course. 2 years in a row, the only team to serve correct temperature plates. I don't know if you know that.
Yeah.
Yeah, we're the only team last year and this year to serve the correct temperature plates. That's a pretty, that's
that's
kind of an
amazing.
easy gateway through to winning. But yeah, the heat definitely, you think, affected you guys a little bit?
I think so. I feel like, I don't know if I'm used to that Arizona heat, but I feel like
Maybe.
I personally didn't feel as hot,
Yeah.
because everyone was saying it's really hot, and I'm over here like, I don't know.
Yeah.
But it definitely, sometimes it would get hot, but other times I'd be like, maybe because I was in the middle, but.
Yeah. Well, also, it's so humid in New Orleans, where Arizona's probably not as humid.
Yeah.
So I prefer the dry heat. It was like 98 in like Vegas. I was like, this isn't even that bad because it's so dry. I'm not like sweating like crazy or anything like that. But did you feel pretty, like, even after a run, like, and obviously some stuff went wrong, did you feel like, I think we got it though? Did you kind of feel that way, or you were kind of like,
I think at the beginning of the run, I was like, okay, we got this. We're chilling. Like, I was talking to the judges, like, making jokes with them, like, confidently doing my cuts. But I feel like near the end of it, near the plating time, that's where I
plating
was like,
is always,
yeah.
plating is rough.
That's where I was like, okay, maybe we don't got this. And
Yeah.
I think I also got in my head a little bit because I was able to see some of the other team's dishes. And I feel like once I saw their dishes, I was like, ooh, like, okay, like.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
I saw some of them.
It kind of got into my head.
Yeah, I think one of the schools did Nessa's America's Best High School Chef Dessert. It was basically
really?
the same. It looked the same. It was so funny. I was like, because my brother Jake texted me. He's like, isn't that Nessa? He's like, that's Nessa's dessert. I was like, that's crazy.
That's funny.
But And then obviously a couple days later the gala happened, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, how was that? I mean, you guys got your. Yeah.
I was definitely more nervous for the gala than I was to compete. I
Really?
feel like, yeah. The whole day.
I was shaking at the gala. Oh my God,
it
the
was
gala.
bad. The whole day.
Especially they really like teased you guys with the
They
results.
do. It was bad. Like they would give us a course and then they would announce awards, and then the course, and then
and the
announce
national
awards.
winner is. Before we do that, we're gonna serve the third course.
Exactly. We kept making fun of that because that's what it felt like they were doing. But no, I was so nervous. I was like stress eating. I didn't know I was a stress eater until the gala.
Until the gala.
I was like shoving everything in my mouth, and Bella was like, "Julie, like relax, you're okay." I was like, "No, like I can't." But that whole day, I was so nervous. I was like, "Guys, like I'm gonna be devastated if we don't."
But you got the result you guys were asking for, right?
And we didn't even believe it when they announced it. We're like,
yeah, Dean was like, "Oh, that's us," and you guys were like, "What?"
we're like, "No."
We won.
We're like,
what?
we're not gonna believe it until we hear them say it, and they said it, and that's when we were like, "Oh."
That's awesome that you guys were able to do that, and it's even better. How do you feel about the team that you were actually a part of now is going to become the new team, and you're kind of like, it's almost like you're the above, and you're like, "Go, my children, go, become the new team, win the championship." How do you feel? I mean, especially because your roommate's captaining the team and all of that.
I'm so excited for them. Like,
yeah, right.
I feel like it was bittersweet because I feel like I had formed such a strong connection with everyone, like Hamza, Kari, Najee, Bella, being on the supporting five, and then once I got moved up, I feel like the connection wasn't really as strong anymore. But I'm very excited for them because they deserve it. Yeah. They do. And knowing how it was like being part of that, like I know like they're gonna do amazing. And Bella being captain, like I'm so happy for her.
I'm really excited.
I know she's gonna do
I think
amazing.
she could really bring up
for sure.
The captainship for the CINY New York has historically been something that I think changed with. I don't want to say our team. I want to say the team before our team because that team kind of like just broke apart. We didn't have like a mentoring team. I mean, we weren't really mentors to you guys, but we were there.
Yeah.
The team before us wasn't even like barely existed by the time we even became like selected like a month into school, right? So the captain's usually supposed to like not only be the captain of the 5 or the 10 or whatever it is, but also like everybody. And they're supposed to kind of run the kitchen. They're supposed to make sure stuff's going on. They're at prep, making sure the freshmen are doing what they're supposed to do. They're kind of looked at as like, it's like Dean, the team captain, and then the rest of everybody almost, or like the rest of the core team and then the rest of everybody.
For sure.
But that just changed. Our team didn't really have that, especially coming out of COVID. It was like, there wasn't that many kids around. Yeah. It was just different, and the vibe was different. But I think Bella has the chance to really revitalize that. And she took a lot of leadership responsibility, especially because she got like a bunch of deals. Yeah. She got you guys into like Restaurant Depot and the van and all that.
She's so good. I know she's
amazing. And I'm really excited for what she's gonna do.
Me too.
But I hope you're still doing your job next semester. Keep an eye on the freshmen. Who's the potential? You guys got to pick some people. You guys got to pick like 6 more people. So keep your eye out 100%. Yeah. Anybody from Arizona CCAP coming in that we can keep our eye on?
I think there's a few. I follow like 2 people from CCAP Arizona, like someone named Bradley. I've never met them personally, but I've been like stalking them on Instagram.
Oh, Bradley's coming to the 5th.
Bradley Torres, yeah. Oh,
yeah, he's coming to the 5th, yeah.
So I know of him, and then this girl named Beatrice, I believe, but...
Awesome.
Definitely look out. Arizona's got that talent. You know?
Arizona got that talent. Hey, listen, that CCAP program is something else. That's like, we get a lot from that CCAP. It's funny because this year's boot camp, it's actually a lot of Philly kids, which is interesting. Yeah. Maybe Arizona dropped off. Maybe they put everything they had into Jaylene and Nessa. They got to recover a little bit, you know?
Right.
They taught everything they knew. But after national, or actually before national, something interesting happened, right? It was something interesting. Yeah. In the midst of all the chaos, there was like a light, not even at the end of the tunnel, at the end of the next tunnel, right? It's the Italy thing. And you were the second one to find out. And much like it's happened to you a couple times in the past, you were called into the dean's office. And this time you were probably like, now I really don't know what's going on.
Yeah.
Because he asked me if I like pastry. What is happening right now? So tell me a little bit about that and your thoughts about that.
Yeah, it's still crazy to me.
Yeah, right?
So I think it was day before. It was at Nessa's Peace Corps practice. So we were at Nessa's Peace Corps practice, me and Hamza, and we were watching, and I think I was like falling asleep on the table. It was really late, but I was still there. I was like, and I had like gotten up, and Dean just like randomly asked me like, oh, like Jaylene, have you done pastry before? Have you done? And I was like,
she's like, yeah, I can bake. She was like,
I dabble. And he was like, okay. And
I can make a genoise or pain de gene, on my off time.
Right. And he was like, okay. And that was it.
That was it.
And I was like.
But you knew, because you know Dean, you're like, what's he doing
yeah,
up
I was
there?
like,
What's going on up
he
there?
always has something up his sleeve.
Always.
And I was like, what is this? So I remember Dean left, and I was talking to Nessa. I was like, why like did Dean ask me if I do pastry? Like I was trying to think of everything, like the possibilities. I was like, is he gonna ask me to do a pastry dish? Is he gonna be the pastry chef on this year's five? Like I was thinking of everything that I could be.
You were coming after Nessa's spot as the pastry
right?
chef.
And I was like I have no idea what it could be. Yeah. And then.
But Nessa knew, right? Was she kind of being like?
And
no,
she didn't know.
She didn't know yet.
It was
okay.
the next day. It was the next day where I was in class. I was taking a test, and I get a missed call from Nessa, and I was like, so I text her. I was like, I'm in class right now. Like, what's up? She's like, Dean wants to talk to us. He says it's important. When can you come to his office? And I was like, well, I'm taking a test right now. I'll be there in like 20. It was like I sped up my test. I was like, what is Dean gonna say? Like, I gotta get out of here ASAP.
Did you do okay on the test?
Yeah, I did good.
Okay. Can't let competition get in the way of the grades.
But I had done the test, so I was all the way in Huguenot, so it was really far from here. So I was like,
oh, you were 145?
Yeah.
Oh, that's like blocks. That's like 6 blocks.
Right? So I was like speed walking, like almost jogging over here, and I like came into the kitchen. Some people were there. I was like, where's Nessa? I was like out of breath. And like, oh, she's in Dean's office. I was like, okay.
I'm late.
So I was like,
speed walking back.
Right, I speed walked to Dean's office, and I was like, I like peeped in. I was like, hello. And then Dean's like, oh, like, come in. Nessa's already sitting there. Nessa stares at me, and she stares at me with like a smile, she's like, I know something you don't.
Yeah, she's probably like, I can't wait to see this girl's reaction right now.
And I was like, so I sit down. They're talking about something, and I'm like, what are they talking about? I have no idea what they're talking about. So I'm just sitting there like, and then Dean finally turns over to me, and he's like, okay, let me catch you up to speed. And he goes on to say, every year there's like a competition, and
every time he talks like that, it sounds like he's talking about like a prophecy. It's like the prophecy foretold.
Right?
Once a year in Italy.
No,
Junior World Cup.
Yeah, so the anticipation was building.
Yeah,
I was like,
he could do that too.
And he was like, yeah, so it's in Italy. And I was like, okay. I was like, what does this have to do with me? And it wasn't until he said, and it's a 2-person team.
And you're like, oh.
And I looked over to Nessa, and I was like, and we're over here like cheesing, like staring at each other. We're like, and then he's like, explaining what the competition is, and then he goes, so my question to you is, like, would you be up for it? And I was like, yes, like, is that even a question? Like, of course I'm up for it. And in my head, I was like, hold up, like, I'm not a pastry student. Like, I was definitely freaking out over that, because I was like, I have some knowledge of pastry, but enough to compete in a World Cup? I don't know about that one.
Especially in January.
Exactly.
That's
so
like
soon.
Very soon, right?
So I was like, okay, but like I'm always up for a challenge, and
always.
Like I know if I put my mind to it, like I'll be able to learn, right? And once like Dean caught us up to date, me and Nessa were like, oh my gosh, like who would have thought like the two Arizonians taking on Italy.
Yeah.
But
I didn't even know this thing existed until I was told,
me
right?
Neither. So it was definitely a surreal moment. Even now, like I remember going outside. The whole day it just felt like a fever dream. Like I remember going outside and like FaceTiming my family, and I was like, okay, you guys need to sit down for this. Like let me tell you guys something. And They were
You
also
gotta bring
excited.
me back. Get like dry ice or something. Bring me back some gelato.
Right?
A couple little flavors of gelato. They're gonna have a lot of gelato there. So
A
bring me
little
back some
flight of
gelato.
it. Yeah.
I've had gelato. It's very good. When I went to Italy.
I
but-
know, I'm
Where?
excited.
Do you remember where it is in Italy? I don't actually know.
Rimini. Rimini.
Sadly, I do not know. But I mean, is that kind of what your thought process? I know you're going back with Vanessa to work at where she used to work, right?
Exactly.
But like, what's on your mind right now? Are you just kind of like, oh, like let me just have these couple weeks, and then when we get back, is it like, or are you kind of like, when's Italy? Like,
Yeah,
kind
no.
of deal?
So I knew. So once I found out about Italy, I was like, okay, how can I gain more knowledge about pastry? So I went to Nessa. I was like, I want to work somewhere where like I'm able to learn more. And she's always told me about this bakery she worked at, Essence, where the chef was very strict and where she learned a lot, where she learned pretty much most of what she knows now. So I was like, I jokingly was like, oh, well, like, what if I go work at Essence? And she's like, okay, like, actually, she's like, I'll go back if you go back. And I was like, okay, I'm down. And that's how that started, because I was like, okay, like, I know if I work there, I'll be able to gain the knowledge, a little bit more knowledge at least, than what
Yeah.
I have now. And that's the goal for the summer, to gain a little bit more knowledge on pastry. And as soon as I come back, it's going to be
It's game time, right?
Yeah.
Excited because it's not only a competition; it's a whole class.
Exactly.
And I'm really excited because it's not just some pastry competition; it's like sculpting and stuff like
Yeah.
that. I don't know if you've ever seen like or watched some stuff. It's so interesting. It's like a whole other
Yeah,
world.
yeah, for
So
sure.
I'm fascinated to see what you guys are gonna do. I'm probably
know.
gonna be like, you're gonna see me peeking through the window,
Right?
right? Like,
I'm
what
so
they doing? What
excited.
they doing, right?
I'm excited.
Yeah, and then you guys will be training for that. Not only that, the other people in your class are also putting something up in the
Yeah.
December competition.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I think that's
Oh,
really
I
cool
didn't
because
hear
there's
about
6
that.
others in your
Yeah,
class,
yeah.
and they're going to be doing like their own separate thing for the
Wow.
December show.
No, that'd
I
be
think that's
cool.
really
Yeah,
cool.
that is.
I like to watch that dynamic kind of play out and how that's going to
for
work out.
sure.
What is your favorite thing that you have cooked for a competition? Your favorite dish, or even like maybe just a component from one of your team dishes, or if it is one of your team dishes totally. I'm curious of what your favorite dish is. Now that you have a couple under your
trying to
belt.
think.
Life skills doesn't count. I think
Right. I definitely think it was the duck dish in
the duck dish.
Cleveland. I don't know what it is about that. I feel like just the duck itself, I was like, oh my gosh, duck is so exotic. Like,
Yeah, right? That's something you have over me. I am actually not familiar with duck.
Yeah.
I'm not.
No,
So
yeah.
that's really cool that you are.
So I was like, ooh, this is gonna be fun. Like being able to fabricate a duck. Like I've never done that before. It's surprisingly easier than I thought it was gonna be. So I really enjoyed cooking the duck, and like just everything that came with the dish. Like so many components to it. I think that dish really taught me to like multitask and work really fast, because there's so many things I had to be checking on and like stirring, right? And I just really liked just learning the dish, and it was also really good. I really liked eating that dish. But
Yeah, tasty.
Just everything about that dish, from like the ingredients to just the process of learning how to like get used to it and be on time with everything. I feel like it really gave me a lot of knowledge.
That's awesome. And the position you were in on the team, your position's always weird. So I was in that position for my first half of training camp until Thomas took over mine, and then I went to salad.
Yeah.
So it's like the fabricator, saute, salad, dessert, and then
That.
I don't even know. I just call it knife cuts.
Knife cuts.
But it's not. Like
Yeah.
after a little bit, you're like
You
not
just-
doing knife cuts
exactly,
anymore.
and you're doing, like,
so could
something
you go
else.
into detail? Could you try to in the best way you can try to explain like exactly what you did, or you can go into as much detail as you want and just talk
for
about what
sure.
you did.
So I always say, like, on the team, anything that needed to be cut went through me. Like any produce, anything. Oh, minus the bananas, but anything.
banana, yeah.
Anything that needed to be cut pretty much went through me. I was in charge of like all the herbs, all the veggies, and like the garlic, the aromatics. So I was in charge of all of that. So I really had to just like, I kind of liked it because it was like one thing after another. So once I finished with something, like, and then I had to pass it on to someone else. So, but that would take me about like 30 minutes, like 40 minutes to like an hour, I'd say, to cut everything, or even less. But after that, I would move on to setting stuff up. Like, for example, like for team, I set up the timbal. Like, I set up the rice with the sausages, or even slicing. I was in charge of slicing as well. So I was definitely handling the knife a lot. And then moving on to plating, like me and Michaela were pretty much on hot side plating the whole time. So it was definitely a little bit of everything. But I very much enjoyed it.
Yeah, that's awesome. And like how you said about how like things flow into each other, yeah, that like makes a lot of sense. That was the case for salad too, but I can only imagine on saute, it does not flow.
Yeah,
it's
right.
probably just like all over the place.
Yeah.
That's why I empathize with people in those positions. Kennedy, and when Thomas was doing it, and Melina, I was like, I get it. I mean, I can't, or I don't get it, but at least I can try to understand it.
Yeah.
Yeah, but the other positions are more kind of like that. Going into like going into like your runs, was there anything like you used to like kind of tell yourself to get into the mindset? Do you have any kind of like rituals going into like I guess ritual would be the best word, going into like a practice, something like that? How do you stay like really calm and like focused? Because you seem, every time I watch you, you seem like pretty calm and focused during your runs. How you manage to do that?
Yeah, I feel like I've always been the type of person that when I'm in my run, I'm very like relaxed. I don't know what it is. Like, I remember being in the practices for like the December show or Ohio show. I would always be like practicing, and then my friends would come and watch, and I'd be wanting to talk to them, and they'd be like, Jaylene, don't talk to us. Like, and I'm like, but like talking to you like helps me, right? So I don't really know. I feel like the mindset is already there. I just go into it, and I'm always in a positive mood, so I'm always like, okay. I be like singing during the run. I'm like, ooh, like I'm humming.
Yeah. Oh my God.
But in my head, I'm just like, okay, like when I'm mincing or whatever, I don't know. I feel like it's just muscle memory, and it's like I don't know. It's something about it, the adrenaline.
Yeah. I like talking during my run only if I'm doing good. If I'm doing bad, I do not like talking during my run, and do not come up to me and talk to me.
For sure. I remember one run I did like really bad, and I was like, most quiet I've ever been. But I get what you're saying.
Those so you feel like you've had have you had runs that you were like consistent and then practice, I guess, like you just drop one practice? Do you think, is there always like a reason for it? Do you think sometimes it just kind of like happens?
I feel like when it's happened to me, I think it's just because I get in my head too much, and I feel like that's always a problem for me. Like, I notice when I get in my head too much and I start overthinking and I start putting too much pressure on me, and I'm like, okay, well, I have to get like higher than a 95, or I have to do really good, or I have to do that's when it starts getting to me, and I'm like, oh my gosh, like I start overthinking, and that's when it all goes like down in flames, right? But that's why before every run, I always try to okay, like you do what you gotta do, like whatever happens, happens, like you know what you're doing, don't overthink it too much. And I'm always like,
yeah, Dean always said he was like, sometimes he thinks getting silver first for your first competition is better because he's like, at least then you're not at a ceiling, because it feels like if you get gold your first comp, like eventually you're not gonna get the gold, and it's gonna be like, oh, like am I getting worse or blah 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 blah, and it's not the case.
Yeah.
So I think that's definitely, there's like up and down sides. Of course you always want to get the goal, but and during practices that can be rough. Imagine you're hitting imagine you're really nailing this, you're hitting 94s like 3 practices in a row, and then you where do you go from there? Some dishes can only get up to like a 94, 95. If you can't go beyond that, then it's like you have to hit the same marks every time. I think for a lot of us, people like me and you, I think we're like, I don't want to be just as good as I was last week. I want to be better than I was last week. You know what I mean? What can I do even better? But I guess there's always stuff you can improve on. But with that, there's always stuff you can mess up on. But what I always told myself is, let me do everything I can possibly do wrong during practices, so I won't do that again. I'm good at making mistakes, but I'm usually pretty good at being able to I did that. I'm not going to do that now, you know?
And I think it was you that helped me out that one time during...
Really? What did I do?
It was during one of the practices for Cleveland. I think it had, the day before that, I had gotten a really high score in practices. It was I think it was a 94. And so I was confident the next day going into my practice. In that next run, I had gotten a 82. And I was really upset. I was like, I think it was my first time getting under a 90 on one of my practices, and I was like, oh my gosh, like I was really upset.
I'm gonna
towards
quit
myself.
right now. I'm gonna drop
Right?
out.
I was like, how did I do so bad? I remember going in the closet and being like, oh my gosh, like, and I think I remember telling you like, oh, like, what'd you get? And I was like, oh, I'm so upset. And I think that's exactly what you told me. You were like, oh, like, it's important to make these mistakes now because you don't want to do it.
Nessa had a similar issue. What I told her, this might have been what I said to you, but I definitely told her this. I said, sometimes you got to take steps back in order to take even more steps forward, which is my logic. Because, like, usually, like, especially with you guys, when you guys make a mistake, you won't make it again. So, like, if you guys have all these practices that are so good, it's like, you almost get, it's like you might not even know you're doing something wrong on the day of because you hadn't done it wrong before. So it's like, and no one catches it.
Yeah.
Right? Like, remember those, in April, those kids, like bringing in the wrong measurements for like the cake and stuff like that, the pastry students.
Yeah.
If that's not caught during practices, then it's like it's almost like even though it was caught on the day of, like they still didn't know how to respond properly, and that's a huge issue. You want to be able to catch all your mistakes beforehand. What do you have to say for all these kids coming into the fall? So a lot of them, I always talk to new students. I always try to be as involved as I can. I was with you guys. I'm going to try again. And a lot of them are like, I ask about competition, like, ooh, I don't know, that's a lot. Like, what do you think? And I'm not talking about like being on the core team and going. I'm talking about just competition in general. Like, what's your honest like advice for them, or what would you tell them if you were like, oh, I'm on the fence kind of thing?
Yeah. Go for it. I don't know. I feel like so many people that are on the competition team right now were on the fence about it, and I feel like none of them have any regrets. Like, and it's like you have nothing to lose. Like, yeah, you may go into it, and who cares if you don't have like the knowledge needed? Like, you'll learn along the way, and it's also like you don't need to get a gold your first competition. You don't need to get anything. Like, the best thing you can get out of it is the experience.
100%.
And it's like, I much rather have like the knowledge and experience I have gained from the competitions than like those medals right there, right? So.
I mean, people ask me a question about like culinary, and if I have the answer, I'll tell them, how do you know that? You know so much. I'll be like, it literally was just on my dish. It was on this dish, or it was in my team competition. Like, that's the only reason I know it is because I literally did it like for this thing.
Right.
Oh, I wanted to ask you earlier, is there any interesting knife cuts that you learned just because of the team? Because for me, I lasaged like 400 times. And like, so I definitely can do that now. I can't do any other knife cut other than lasagna. So I don't know if you did anything kind of interesting.
On team? I don't know if I did anything interesting on team. Did I? No, I feel like cutting the mirliton was interesting, but...
The what?
The mirliton, the chayote.
Oh, the chayote?
It wasn't interesting. It was
Did
just
you tourné it, or?
No, I just cut it. They wanted me to, like, the judges gave us critique to tournay it next time.
You're
I was
so
like,
old, bro.
It's like I could do it right now for you.
But actually, it's so funny. For our second tryout, it wasn't with you guys, but our team. I was paired up with Thomas and Gio, and we got a mystery ingredient, and it was chayote, and we tornaded it.
Actually.
Yeah, that's really funny. But
that is funny.
Yeah, the lasagna for me. But you just kind of had a lot of like, I'm assuming it was a lot of like mincing, a lot of like chiffonade, like that.
There were so many herbs, and it was like, at times I'd get frustrated because I'd be like, ugh, like, you need 1/8 teaspoon of cilantro, but
do it yourself.
Right? Like you need like so little cilantro, but it makes like the whole board green, so I have to like take time to go like wash it.
Yeah,
and it's like, and then I have to move, and it like, especially like the parsley or the garlic gets all over your hands, so that's also annoying. And it's like, I would get like frustrated at times, but I'd be like, okay, it's whatever. I had to find like a system, like, oh, wear gloves to mince this, or like.
You have to separate eggs too? We had to do that.
Separate eggs.
They do to you guys, and you guys had like 2 fridges. Oh my God,
right,
you guys were decked out, man. I don't understand.
They give us the full treatment.
Oh my, the full treatment, the full treatment. What's beyond for you? I mean, beyond Italy, beyond that, what do you want to do, if in the culinary field, like, or at all? Like, what's your goal eventually down the line? Is it Michelin star? Is it something else? I don't know.
So I actually want to do my own clothing. Like, no, I'm just Imagine.
Make mom proud. Look, I'm in fashion.
No, but as of right now, I don't have like a set plan. I know I do want to do some things in like the private chef area because I was able to work with a private chef back in the summer, and I really enjoyed that, watching how it all worked. And I think I definitely want to dabble in that area a little bit. But other than that, I think I'm still figuring myself out, figuring out the culinary industry out. So, because there's so many things you can do. And
yeah, there really is. And the more you learn, the more you realize there's different like areas that you can really get into, either indirectly or directly working with food. Do you have like someone that's like your biggest inspiration in like culinary?
In culinary?
Or pastry, culinary.
Culinary pastry.
That's implied. The baking students know that they're implied.
Yeah.
You know.
Do I? I feel like there's not really a set person. I feel like everyone who has been on this journey with me up to now has impacted my life in one way or another. I always look up to my culinary teacher because she was there with me from the start.
Yeah.
When I didn't know anything about culinary, or when I got accepted to this school, like she was there from the beginning, and even now I keep in touch with her. So she definitely always inspires me.
That was sophomore or junior year?
That was sophomore year. I met her sophomore year.
That's a long time ago.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So,
and just the culinary class, and you got to know CCAP through. That's so cool.
Mm-hmm.
That's awesome. I'm not sure how long we've been going, but I think we should just about wrap it up. Unless you have anything final you want to add. I'm really excited where you go in your future, and I'll be watching.
Thank you.
And I'll hopefully get I think I earned a free meal at your restaurant if you get one.
No, you definitely
did. So I'm recording, and it is confirmed I get at least one free meal.
Right.
So that has been this week's episode of an Expo and Excellence podcast. We hope you guys enjoyed, and you guys have a good night.
Bye. Yeah.
What am I closing?
Do we clap? 3, 2,
No, you don't have
1.
to clap again.